Welcome to episode 11 of DJ Center Stage TV. My name is Jim Collins. If you're enjoying the content of our show, be sure to subscribe on YouTube and Mixcloud. Today in the show, we'll be having a conversation with a gentleman I admire. He's known as the perfect host, and I like to refer to him as Gentleman Jim. Welcome, Jim Cerone, to the show.
Jim, thank you so much. It's great to see you and talk to you.
Likewise, I'm part of many of the same Facebook groups you're in, and oftentimes you offer tips for other MCs and DJs to help improve their performance and sales. What I thought was really neat is your approach to making guests attending a wedding feel like guests. Can you share a little bit about that, please?
Absolutely. I'm really devoted to service, and I think I get that from my parents. When they were alive, they were the perfect hosts. We had everybody at our house all the time. It was just, they loved having people around them, and they loved gathering family and friends. My mom would try out a new recipe. My dad would mix a new drink at the bar, and it just was this wonderful atmosphere that I was fortunate to grow up in. And serving others, making them feel comfortable, making them feel welcome, making sure every guest is included. That was the hallmark of a great Cerone party at my parents'. And so I think that just comes to me naturally. It took me a while to figure out that I was incorporating that without knowing it into my DJ events. And when I realized that and started focusing more on it, my events were more successful and my clients felt more of a connection, and the guests at the wedding participated instead of being spectators. So yes, I've got a long philosophy about why you should host the party and not just DJ.
Oftentimes, are they expecting that you're the MC when you do that, or they just think that you work at the facility? How does that work?
Many times they say, "Do you work at the hotel?" And I'm fine with that. I have no problem. To me, I'm an employee of whatever facility and venue I'm working in. And if you think about the way you want the guests to feel, Maya Angelou's quote is, people may not remember what happened, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And when you're a stranger walking into a room you've never been in before, you're the first one into the party, you and your husband parked first and got there. If there's a smiling face that knows all the answers to the questions you might ask, that can carry that big, heavy place setting that you bought for the bride and the groom over to the gift table, or can direct you to the restrooms or help you find your table number, that makes them feel welcome. And a smile is the simplest thing, but it opens the door and makes you approachable. And every venue is different. Sometimes I step into those shoes because no one from the venue is doing that. Other times they have people that will be at the front, and so I'll step back. I vary my approach based on what the venue staff is doing. But if you can literally greet each person as they walk in the room, as DJs, what we're really doing is building trust. We want the guests to trust us once we get to the dance floor that we're going to show them a good time. Well, that starts the minute the first guest walks in. And so if you're not a stranger when you make your first announcement, the guests are more likely to stop what they're doing and listen because they've had a short conversation with you. In my Perfect Host DVD, I talk about being able to make small talk. And that's the hallmark of a great conversationalist. A great host is able to know a little bit about a lot of things. And when the guest first walks in, I'm not having 5 or 10 minute conversations. It's literally small talk. How was the ceremony?
Right.
Where are you from? How do you know Kate and John? Just those simple questions. I do not introduce myself. I always wear a name tag, and people have different philosophies on name tags. I wear one because the staff wears one. The people who are serving you often wear one. And I think it's just a way to break the ice and let them know you're in a position of credibility. You're someone they can ask questions of. So I do go around. I never sit down. I'm standing now. I never sit at an event. I am constantly roaming the room, and I'm doing that for a couple of reasons. I'm always checking the volume. The biggest complaint that grandma, that mom have is that we went to a wedding and we couldn't talk to each other across the table. That's because the DJ has the music too loud. The only way you can know that is if you get out from behind your speakers and walk to every corner of the room. So during cocktails, as the first guests walk in, I'm making sure that the volume is right. And then as the room fills up with people, you may need to adjust the volume up or down a bit. based on the conversation level in the room. So during cocktails, I'm making small talk, helping carry gifts, whatever I can do to make guests feel comfortable. During dinner, people don't like to be interrupted when they're eating, but I'm walking around and just trying to make eye contact with people. If somebody at the table is looking up at me, I'll say, "Everything okay? Do you need anything? Do you have requests you'd like to dance to later?" So I do use that dinner time, and then towards the end of dinner to try to get requests if possible. Depending on the venue, the size,
Yeah.
how high the ceilings are, if it's 150 guests or 300 guests, all of those variables, and also how many speakers you can put throughout the room. If you're playing a cocktail hour with one Bose Compact
Yeah.
and it fills up with 200 people, that's just, it's not going to cut it. Eventually, the conversation is going to overshadow it, and that's okay. If you can have two speakers at half volume, that's a better way to cover cocktail hour. But now you're talking about additional setup time and equipment.
Mhm.
But to me, cocktail hour and dinner hour music are vital. They're so, so important to setting the tone, showing the bride and groom's personalities, creating that trust and comfort level. When an aunt and uncle hear a Motown song, they don't realize it, but they're doing this. And sometimes you can catch somebody mouthing the words. They're not singing, they're having a conversation with somebody, but you realize they're actually singing along. It's so key to setting the atmosphere and creating this welcoming feeling. And then the next song is a new Ed Sheeran song, or it's a Head in the Heart, or it's the Decemberists. And so the younger people in the audience are like, "Hey, this is kind of cool." So I really get to know my bride and groom, and what are your favorite artists, and who have you seen concerts with your friends with? And I incorporate and weave that all through cocktail and dinner. Dinner music, once often in Indianapolis in this area, will have introductions, perhaps a welcome by dad, and then a blessing. So the first couple of songs after the blessing, that 15, 20 minutes, is low and romantic, not sleepy. And then I start to bring the tempo back up as dinner finishes, because you want to subliminally tell people that the party is about to get going. When there's a song that is way too loud or way too soft, and I find that, let's say I play it a couple of times, I'll just take it and I'll create my own edit. I'll normalize it myself. There are some songs that have really soft passages and then a really loud passage, and sometimes that will jump out of the speakers and you go, "Wow, that's too high." I'll just go through and I use GarageBand. It comes with all Apple products. It's a really friendly, easy program to use.
Okay.
And you can just adjust your volume levels and bring the peaks down a little bit, bring the soft passages up a little bit,
Hmm.
and then long fades. I don't mix my music live for cocktail and dinner. I create a playlist in advance.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll tweak it and move songs around or add songs or take songs away live, but what I tighten each song. So it starts when it's supposed to. I mean, the split second the song before finishes, the next song starts, and then the ending of songs. And the best example I can think of is Bonnie Raitt's "Something to Talk About." The fade on that song is almost like the fade of "Hey Jude." It goes forever. So I created my own edit and I faded it quicker,
Yeah.
so that you don't have that period where the volume level drops below human hearing, but the song's still playing. So I edit songs myself.
But speaking about music and leading into that, how do you keep up to date with new music? So what are some resources that you're using, and how much time a week are you setting aside to research artists and songs?
I have a couple of different strategies that I use. I think it's so important to be up to date on new music, to have everything before a guest comes up and stumps you. I hate that. So I want to know every song that's out. So Monday mornings, I get an email from a place called Mediabase or All Access. Mediabase is a company that automatically monitors radio stations and what they're playing. They're able to get a fingerprint of a song. And as soon as the software hears that fingerprint, it notches it and logs that what the station's played. So it's a very realistic representation of airplay.
Hmm.
So every Monday morning, I get that email, and it's kind of a chart recap of what happened last week. So it tells you the latest songs that moved up on the top 40 chart, which songs are new debuts, which songs had the biggest moves. And so every Monday morning, it's just an automatic thing. I go and I look at that email, and then I check it against my computer and see if I have those. Now, this morning, for example, I know that there's a new Chainsmokers and Coldplay song that just came out.
Yes. Yes.
And there's a new Lorde, Lorde. She has a new song. I subscribe to Prime Cuts, and everybody has their own favorite choice of music resource or subscription. Those two songs are in the top 30 of the chart, but they haven't popped up on Prime Cuts because they came out on Friday.
Right.
And so those are things that can catch you if you've got an event with a lot of young people that Saturday and you don't have the new song that came out Friday. I'll often just see that I don't have it, buy it, and then I'll get it on Prime Cuts the next week because I don't want to be stumped. It's probably the last 2 years, 3 years that it's really changing. And I say it's harder to be a DJ now than ever. And people ask why. And it's because music is coming from so many different directions now. When we grew up, Casey Kasem, Ryan Seacrest, as long as you had the 40 songs in the top 40, and you don't need all of those because not all of them are dance songs, but that was your barometer. Okay, these are the chart hits that everybody knows, that everybody's listening to. We all listen to the same top 40 station. It was easier. And now music is cheaper to record in the first place, so there's more people making albums. The music comes from Vine, from Vimeo, from YouTube, from everywhere you can imagine. So you have to really have your finger on the pulse and be looking for the next juju on that beat, or Watch Me Whip and Nene, because those are going to come from different places than the top 40 chart. So I have about 5 tabs open on my computer that I check Wednesday or Thursday. I download my Prime Cuts, and then that day I look through the Billboard radio chart, the Shazam chart. So if somebody has their phone, and I have, of course, a DJ case on my phone, but if somebody's holding up their phone in a restaurant because they hear a song they like, that's a really good indication it's going to be a future hit. And so I look all the way through the top 100 Shazam chart. Now they have both a US chart and a world chart. So if you really want to get deep into it, you can look at both of those. Spotify has a list of the most streamed songs, and I think that's essential to look at because sometimes those are completely different than what's on the top 40 chart.
Absolutely, yes.
So Spotify, Shazam, there's Soundhound, and there's some other song recognition charts. I look at the iTunes chart because if people are buying and downloading a song, then they really like it. Because it's so funny how quickly we've gone from wanting to own a song to just wanting to stream a song. And so if somebody's plunking down 99 cents or $1.29 for a song, that's an indication it's going to be a big hit. So I look at the iTunes chart. And then we have a couple of local radio stations. I still like to check them, although I think in general, radio listenership is probably declining. It's still good to know what songs they might be playing that the national chart isn't playing. And we have a great, what they call a AAA or adult alternative station out of Bloomington, Indiana. Great programmers. I know them from my time in Bloomington, and they really love music. So if the quality, really cool indie stuff, and Head in the Heart and Kings of Leon and Amos Lee, that style of stuff, they've got their finger on the pulse. So I love looking at their chart too.
Talk about an experience, if you can share, of a wedding you emceed that you just you'll never forget.
This one goes back a couple of years, and my dad loved to tell this story because it illustrated being able to think on your feet. And sometimes if you're a real creative person and you're young and you've only done 100 events, sometimes your mind just works great. I think the more experienced you are, the more prepared you are to handle situations. Then, it's happened before. You get to the point where you say, been there, done that. Well, this was when YouTube songs mashups were kind of a new thing. And I'm in Indianapolis, but this was the brother of another wedding I had done here in Indy, and it was in Michigan. So I'm in Dearborn at the Dearborn Inn, a venue I haven't played before. I did a lot of preparation. I made sure that I got a room layout in advance. We got there the day before so I could walk around the venue and get an idea of the layout and everything. Well, the bride and groom had told me weeks in advance that they had this mashup. They wanted to do a YouTube-style first dance. And this was, again, a new thing at the time. So they had, I can't remember what the first song was, but I'll never forget that they were going to break into Chris Brown's Forever. So the groom made the mix and sent it to me via email. So I checked it. And at that time I was using CDs. So that tells you how many years ago this was. I had it on 2 different CDs. I would always burn a CD of the formal dances for every wedding. I would have that in 2 places, and then I had it on a computer. So I set up, and I always like to run through the songs on the CD to be sure they all play. So I did that, the intro songs, the first dance, the father-daughter, the mother-son. The other thing that was unique about this wedding, in Indy, the first dance is mostly after dinner. I know New York style is different, the East Coast is different, but that was kind of a new thing for us at that time to do the first dance before dinner. Well, that's the way this one was structured. Introduction, right into first dance, and then blessing and dinner. So the crowd, we do the introductions, they come into huge applause. I forget, 250 guests probably. And I start their first dance song, and it begins playing, and they go through the first slow part, and then it cuts to Chris Brown. And the crowd just goes nuts. And the bride and groom had practiced. They had it choreographed beautifully. And I looked down at my CD player, and on Denon CD players, when it got to under 30 seconds, it would flash at you. And I look down, and it's flashing. And I know that's not the end of their routine. And now it's 10 seconds, 9, 8, and I have no clue what to do. How could the song be over? That's going through my head. And I don't have any other song queued up ready. I have the first dance on the other CD ready to go because I always have 2 copies, but it wasn't in the right place. And the song stopped, and there was silence, and I went like this. Okay. Right. And the crowd joined in, and everybody thought that's how it was supposed to end.
Wow.
Now the groom kind of looks at me over his shoulder, and they walk to their table to sit down, and they begin the dinner service and everything. And then, 10 minutes later, the groom comes over and goes, "What happened?" I go, "I think the file got corrupted. I transferred it from your email. I listened to it all the way through. I burned it to CDs." He goes, "Well, okay, never mind." And then as dinner's finishing up, I thought, how could I fix this? And they were going to do father, daughter, mother, son after dinner. And I thought, how could I explain this in some way and have them do the whole thing? And so rather than do the whole mashup again, I queued up my copy of Chris Brown's Forever. And then I said to the groom, I think his name was Chris, I said, "Chris, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have you 2 come back out on the floor, and then we're going to do that second half of the choreographed routine." He goes, "Okay." And so I thought about how I could introduce that. And I said, "We've had so many requests from the guests that Chris and Jenny are going to do an encore of their dance routine." I pressed play, and they were able to finish it, the whole thing that they had practiced so long to do. And there was another huge round of applause. So that's probably the most memorable screw up. And that was the first and last time I ever let a couple make their own mix. I insist from now on that I do all the editing. I make all the mashups. That was a lesson learned. And I thought I had myself covered. And I had listened to the entire mix. It had played fine. Somehow, some way, the file got screwed up. And I don't know. Another memorable instance, alcohol plays a part in almost every event we do, unless it's a dry wedding. Well, of all the 365 days you choose to get drunk, getting drunk on your wedding day is never pretty. Yeah. And I was doing a wedding in a circular place in town. I was on kind of one half of the circle, and I could see across from me there was some kind of disruption. I could see a bunch of people like shuffling across. I couldn't quite make it out because the dance floor was going and people were in the way, but there's something on the far side, and I could see them go out the entrance to the hotel. Well, somebody comes over and tells me that was the young lady, that was the bride, and she had passed out and she did not return. So that's a tricky thing. What do you do when you have 2 hours of dancing left and one of the principal people that you need at the wedding is no longer there? The groom also stayed and continued to drink, and I had to physically steer him back to his mother and brother at the end because I found him wandering around the facility trying to find his way to his room. So if I have one piece of advice, it's get drunk any other day but your wedding day.
Right. Talking about guests who are drinking a little bit too much, when they come up to you and they're getting a little bit forceful about a song request, how do you handle that?
I'm lucky that I'm 6'4", and I try not to be imposing. I'm always conscious of how large I am, and I don't want to intimidate people, except when they've had a little bit too much to drink and they get belligerent. And then I make sure that I'm standing all 6'4" and my shoulders are back and I smile. That's a way to make yourself approachable, but it's also a way to disarm somebody who's drunk because they're trying to make you mad.
Right.
And the more they try, the bigger I smile. Mm-hmm. And I just say, no, we're not going to play that tonight. Oh, come on, man. You just play it off my phone. Just play. No, we're not going to do that tonight. This is Ken and Jenny's night. And I think that being firm, speaking in very short sentences, a drunk person can't coherently follow a long explanation. So often just no. And then it doesn't give them anywhere to go. So again, that's a way of, the more experience you have, the better you learn to deal with those kind of situations. When I was younger and there were 3 fraternity guys asking for a song, I would just cave and play it.
Right.
But now it's my reputation on the line, and I have to make sure I honor the bride and groom's wishes. And you're crowd control. You are the security force. You're the school teacher. You're the sober person driving the bus.
Yeah.
By the time the dance floor opens, the venue staff is going to have their meal, and you're often the only person in the room who hasn't had a drink. So it's a lot to do while you're listening to songs and picking the next one and keeping the dance floor hopping. I try to really teach myself to watch the entire room, because that's where trouble sometimes starts, is on the outskirts.
Yes.
And so watching more than the dance floor is really important.
Right. I had a gentleman approach the booth, and he looked like The Rock. He was probably 7'5", or, really buff and intimidating. And so he came up and he walked behind the booth next to me, and I'm like, okay, he's just going to ask for a request. And so I smiled at him. He jumped on the laptop and started to scroll through the music library. I'm like smiling. No, you can't do that. He's like, no, the DJ said it was okay. My DJ that was working with me did not say it was okay. And so he doesn't make eye contact with him, and he's still looking on the laptop, going through and searching through the songs. I'm like, what do I do at this point? Am I going to be confrontational with him? Continue to say, step back, is this going to escalate and turn into something physical? Again, I said, you need to step away from the equipment. He's like, the DJ said it was okay. And he continued to do it again. Finally, his girlfriend, who happened to be close, lured him away from it. Thank God. I don't know what I would have done.
Well, the thing that we sometimes forget in a situation like that is we have tremendous power. Mm-hmm. We have the volume and we have a mic. Mm-hmm. And if there was a situation where I felt my safety was a big deal, I would either cut the music, because that's going to get everybody's, their heads will instantly turn to you, or I would get on the mic and say the groom's name, or say the dad's name. You could say security, but again, if dancing started, there may not be anybody else there.
Right.
But if you say, and that's why it's so important to memorize everybody's names. In a situation like that, you don't have time to look at a clipboard. You need to know dad's name, the groom's name. And that's why building trust with the wedding party, not just the guests, but if there's 10 members of the wedding party. Do your best to know every one of their names. And if you get to know them during the introductions as you're lining them up, then you can call on one or two of the biggest ones if you get into trouble.
Talking about some celebrities.
I was in radio for 20 years.
Yeah.
I started at our high school station. I was on the radio in college. I got a job in Bloomington, Indiana, right out of school. That was a great market. I think by market size, it was market 230 or something. It was a very small market, but it was really fun for me. I love music so much, playing new artists, listening to new songs and deciding what to add to the station. And as a smaller market station, the ratings weren't as key. It wasn't as vital. So we would take a chance on some groups. I remember meeting PC Quest, which was this group on RCA Records. Jules Shear, who wrote All Through the Night with Cyndi Lauper. And I think he also wrote If She Knew What She Wants for the Bangles. So mostly a songwriter, but he had released a solo album. We got to go see a lot of concerts at that time. And then I was hired in Indianapolis by WZPL. And that was market 23, something like that. And so much more on the line. And the station's ads, what songs we would play, were very important. And so we would get a lot of free concerts and a lot of backstage. So I got to meet Steve Winwood, the B-52s, Amy Grant, John Mellencamp, Richard Marx, Whitney Houston. Now, Whitney Houston was between her first album and her second album, and they had this dinner in Chicago they invited a lot of radio programmers to. And I didn't get to sit at her table. It was maybe 30 or 40 people, but we all got our picture taken with her, and she was very gracious, very nice. I got to interview John Mellencamp, who's an Indiana boy, at his studio. Now, Indiana, Southern Indiana, you think of cornfields and you think of things being out in the country. His studio is off a side road, down a back road, down a gravel road, way out in the country. And he invited just the local media to come talk to him when the album with Cherry Bomb and Paper and Fire, the Lonesome Jubilee album, was released. That was a huge kick because he was a pretty big star at that point. And that was really something to sit and spend an hour talking about his music.
And were you a fan of his too at the time, or did you have to find?
It's a law in Indiana.
Okay.
You have to be a Mellencamp fan and never call him his other name, especially not to his face, because he will punch you. And I'm such a fan. I am like, I have a crush on these people. When we met Sarah McLachlan, who I think is a brilliant artist.
Beautiful.
I was just, her album is called Fumbling Towards Ecstasy. I was just fumbling when I met her. I said, "Oh, I love your new album. And I think the song Adia is going to be a hit." And she stopped and she turned and looked at me because the song hadn't been released as a single yet. And she said, "We were thinking about releasing that as a single." I go, "It's brilliant. It's going to be huge." So Rick Springfield, I got to interview him by phone once. We weren't in person. But I was a huge fan of his. I never got to meet Springsteen. The Stones, we were supposed to meet the Rolling Stones, I think pre-show or after show. I can't remember what we had the backstage pass on. And I couldn't wait. I thought that was going to be unbelievable. Well, we were in like the after suite, and it was sponsored by Budweiser. I don't know why I remembered that, but they never showed. Like a couple roadies came in, but Rod Stewart also was supposed to meet. We waited around backstage. He never showed. But a guy who just recently passed away, Al Jarreau, I did get to meet him and talk to him. And the only thing I really knew his catalog. So I asked him all kinds of questions about who did he record with and, who did you tour with? And the thing that surprised me was he was smoking. And I thought, with a voice like Al Jarreau, what are you doing with this cigarette?
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that just really surprised me. So I've been so fortunate, and in so many ways, radio was a really fun business. And the thing that I tell people if I'm asked to speak at a career day is, name some radio personalities that you know. And somebody always says Howard Stern. Yeah. Somebody might say Rush Limbaugh, or the big like morning jocks in their town. And I said, beyond that, all those other people that are DJs on the air, they're making a very average living. There's only a few people that are making a lot of money. So if you want to go into radio, it's fun, it's exciting. You get to meet celebrities, you get free concert tickets, but you're not going to make much money.
So, Jim, who are your mentors?
Well, of course, my parents, who supported and encouraged everything I did. I'm the middle child, and my sister is the classic overachiever, and I was the slacker. But even so, my parents encouraged me, and my grades weren't great, but I loved radio. I'm lucky that I knew what I wanted to do from about the age of 16. Then DJing before the internet was a really solitary thing. You didn't talk to other DJs. You didn't know the other DJs in your town. And so that's what I grew up in. I didn't have anybody to learn from. And so I did a lot of things. I created my own bad habits. Then the internet happened, and I got on, searched DJ, and here's all these websites and bulletin boards and chat boards about DJing. And there's people from all across the country and all across the world. And pretty quickly, I heard the name Mark Farrell. And I was a little hesitant at first. To understand Mark Farrell's Getting What You're Worth, you have to really dig into you have to do your homework, because Mark packed so many concepts and ideas into that seminar. Just one or two of those ideas could change your life if you really listen repeatedly. And I can quote the seminar pretty much verbatim at this point because I've listened to it so many times. He lays out how important DJs are to an event and how you can make a full-time living at it. And so I first heard that message, I think about 1999. And I had never been to a DJ convention before. I didn't know that there were DJ conventions. I didn't know about DJ magazines. So I discovered all this stuff, and I went to go see him speak. I drove to Grimes, Iowa, to see him speak at a prodj.com get-together. Then I went to see him speak in Chicago because the Mobile Beat convention summer stop was there. Then I went to the Las Vegas DJ convention, and on from there. Got involved with the American Disc Jockey Association, thanks to Peter Mary, who was a follower of Mark Farrell. And so from all of these things, I met and was mentored, and I was not a big investor in myself. And if you want to be successful, you have to understand that it costs a little money to make a little money. And Tiger Woods has a coach, and the most successful people have mentors and leaders that they follow, and they invest in training. So I began to buy everything I could get my hands on, and that's everything from Randy Bartlett's 1% Solution, which is brilliant. Yeah. Peter Mary's Professional Process course. I went to workshops. I went to Mark Farrell's MC workshop and the Love Story workshop and the bronze, gold, and silver levels. And there's a lot of great resources now that I wasn't aware of or didn't exist when I started as a DJ. So I have a tremendous amount of mentors. You can learn something from anybody. I also read a lot. I know not everybody loves to read, but I read everything I can get my hands on. I buy every DVD that comes out, because if I learn one thing that can help me in a situation that's difficult or tricky, then it's been worth it.
So talking about markets and doing this as a full-time job, how do you think DJs approach this in different various locations? And can you be successful as a DJ full-time?
That's a real challenge. And the not in my market, you might be able to get $1,200 or $2,500, but not in my market. That's an excuse that's been debunked by Randy Bartlett, Mark Farrell, Peter Mary, lots of other people. Mm-hmm. I'm a little more practical. Not every town can support a fire department, right? Some towns have volunteer fire departments because there's just not enough people. The population's not big enough to support a full-time fire chief. I'm not certain that every single town can support a full-time DJ. You can define your market. You can expand your market. Instead of covering a 25-mile radius, you might have to cover a 100-mile radius. There's DJs in the upper Midwest that have to drive 4 hours, 6 hours to events. So I think that it is a problem of scale. And to be honest, you might have to move. If you want to work full time as a DJ, now Mitch Taylor is the unique exception. He's in Escanaba, Michigan.
I was just thinking about him when you mentioned that.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of other people who made it successful.
Right.
But I think that's very rare. And you have to have all those qualities of not just being a great DJ, but being a great business person, be a great marketer, be a great networker, understand advertising. There's a lot that goes into to making a full-time living in a smaller market. Indianapolis, where we happen to settle, has something like 27,000 weddings or marriages a year in the kind of 5-county area surrounding Indianapolis. So we just happen to fall into a market that works. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important for you to understand that how many venues are within 50 miles. Make a list of them, and then determine if your city, if your market can support a full-time business. If not, then you might have to expand and maybe move.
Jim, what are some successful ways that you could establish your DJ business?
Well, I think it's important to have goals. And if you read business books, they say write down concrete goals and the specific steps you're going to take to get to them. And there's goals, there's priorities, there's different ways that you can organize that. But I think if you want to establish your DJ business, you have to do research. You got to put some work in. What are the top venues in your area? What are the costs of different venues in your area? What are the budget venues? What are the high-end venues? What are the wedding planners that are the most successful in your area? The top photographers, the top caterers, the top florists. You should know all of those. And when I started, I didn't. I just went wherever the jobs took me. But when I began to do a conscious goal list, these are the 5 places. How come I'm not working there, and what can I do to get there? These are the 5 wedding planners I want to work with. These are the top 5 photographers. And then take action on those things. I joined a group that's now called ILEA, the International Live Events Association. Why did I join that group? Because I noticed on their member roster, that's where all the top people in my city were. I went to a meeting as a guest. I looked around the room. I'm like, oh, that's so-and-so, and that's so-and-so. And so you have to go where they go. You have to network where they network. And you can kind of break your way into those circles. Now, people skills, understanding tact, being a good conversationalist, knowing when to shut up, those are key things of networking. You want to listen much more than you talk at a networking event. Ask questions of somebody, get them to open up about what their challenges are, what their experience was, where they came from, how they got into the business. People love to talk about themselves, so shut up and find out about them rather than trying to pitch you. Networking events, the big no-no is taking a card out and that's the start of your conversation. No, that's a big no-no. So figure out the top venues in your area and figure out how to get into them.
What's the best way for DJs and MCs to get in touch with you?
JimCerone.com is my main website. There is a Jim Cerone, theperfecthost.com, where you can see the DVDs, but unfortunately that website is old and really needs to be refreshed. So I'll work on that, but you can always send me an email, jim@jimcerone.com. That's JIMCERONE.com. Yes, we've had our name pronounced and misspelled every way you can imagine, but that's the best way to reach me. You can find me online at Facebook, at Twitter, at Instagram, Pinterest, although that page needs to be developed. But that's the way to reach me. And then I love talking the DJ business, so you can always reach out to me. I'm on Facebook groups a lot, and I'm so fortunate that I had some mentors who helped me learn, and I just want to pass it on. When all of us help each other, we stop the mistakes that we made when we were younger. So if I wish I could go back and apologize to the people whose weddings I screwed up when I didn't know what I was doing. But hopefully I can prevent another DJ from making those same mistakes. Gary Vaynerchuk did a video recently. And again, I read everything I can get my hands on. I follow a lot of people. I read a lot of blogs. Mm-hmm. Gary Vaynerchuk is a guy you should know about and some books you should read. I'm not sure. Amazon, there used to be a software or a website called Shelfari. Mm-hmm. And all of the books I read, I had on those shelves. And now I think it's part of Amazon. But if you have questions about business books or financial books or advertising or marketing books. I know them all. I've read them all. So if you have recommendations, if you want some ideas, you can reach out to me. But there's so much business to go around. There's so much business to go around. I think that no matter what in our lifetime, I don't think weddings are going to go away. I think corporate parties are still going to happen. There's still going to be mitzvahs, and there could be music programs that could maybe replace us, but nobody can replace a good host and an MC and somebody who makes an event run smoothly. And so if we all work together and share our knowledge, all of those events are better, and the profile, the opinion or perception of DJs gets better,
Right.
then we're able to charge what we're worth. So we all got to pull together. So I'm here to help. You help me, I'll help you, and everybody gets a better event, and it's just a win-win all the way around.
Jim, once again, thank you so much. Stay tuned, everybody, for our next episode.